March 1244. High above the valleys of southern France, a fortress clings to the summit of a steep mountain. 4 months, enemy forces have surrounded it. The defenders know the end is near. Supplies are running low. Escape seems impossible. Every path down the mountain is watched. Every route is dangerous. Yet, according to historical accounts, something extraordinary happens in the final days before the fortress surrenders. Under cover of darkness, several individuals slip out of Montségur and disappear into the night carrying an unknown treasure. By sunrise, they are gone. The fortress eventually falls. The people inside face their fate. But whatever was carried down that mountain is never recovered. No confirmed discovery. No definitive explanation. Nearly 800 years later, historians, treasure hunters, and curious travelers continue asking the same question. What was so valuable that people risked everything to save it? Tonight, we travel to one of France's most dramatic historical sites, a place where breathtaking scenery meets one of Europe's greatest unsolved mysteries. The mountain fortress that refused to surrender. Long before visitors began climbing the mountain to admire the view, Montségur stood as a symbol of resistance. Rising more than 1,000 meters above the surrounding landscape, the rocky peak dominates the countryside of southern France. Even today, reaching the summit requires effort. Visitors follow a winding trail upward through forests and steep slopes before the ruins finally emerge against the sky. The location alone explains why this site captured the imagination of generations. Standing atop the mountain, it feels as though the fortress exists between worlds. Below lie fertile valleys, villages, and roads. Above stretches an endless horizon of rolling hills and distant peaks. The builders of Montségur understood the value of elevation. From the summit, approaching travelers could be seen long before they arrived. Natural cliffs protected much of the mountain. The fortress appeared almost fused with the rock itself, creating an impression of strength and permanence. Yet Montségur became famous not because of its architecture, but because of the people who sought refuge there. During the 13th century, southern France was home to the Cathars, a religious movement whose beliefs differed significantly from those of the established church. While historians continue debating aspects of Cathar theology, one fact is clear. They attracted followers throughout the region and eventually found themselves in conflict with powerful authorities. What began as religious disagreement evolved into persecution. Communities were targeted. Supporters faced increasing pressure. Many Cathars sought places where they could live according to their beliefs without fear. Montségur became one of those places. Over time, the fortress transformed into far more than a defensive structure. It became a sanctuary. Families arrived seeking safety. Religious leaders gathered there. Supporters traveled difficult roads to reach the mountaintop refuge. For many, Montségur represented hope during an uncertain time. As years passed, the fortress acquired a reputation that extended far beyond the mountain. Stories spread throughout the region. Some viewed it as a stronghold of faith. Others saw it as a challenge to established authority. Both perspectives ensured that Montségur remained at the center of growing tensions. The mountain's isolation offered protection, but isolation could also become a weakness. A fortress can keep enemies out, yet it can also trap those within. As political and religious conflicts intensified across southern France, the people of Montségur understood they occupied a precarious position. The same cliffs that shielded them from danger could one day prevent escape. Still, life continued. Children played within the walls. Travelers arrived bearing news from distant towns. Religious ceremonies took place beneath the shadow of the mountain. To those living there, Montségur was not merely a fortress. It was home. What makes Montségur particularly fascinating is how the landscape itself contributes to the story. Unlike castles built beside rivers or within thriving cities, this fortress sits atop an isolated peak that commands attention from miles away. Visitors today often describe a sense of awe when they first see the mountain rising above the surrounding terrain. The location feels purposeful, almost symbolic. It is easy to imagine why people believe they could find security there. It is equally easy to understand why enemies regarded the fortress as a challenge that could not be ignored. Every stone, every slope, and every narrow pathway helped shape the events that would eventually unfold. By the early 1240s, pressure on the Cathars had intensified dramatically. Montségur remained one of their most important refuges, but its survival was becoming increasingly uncertain. The fortress still stood proudly above the valleys. The mountain still offered protection. Yet powerful forces were closing in. The people inside could see the changes occurring around them. Rumors arrived with travelers. Reports of military movements spread from village to village. The sense of security that once defined life atop the mountain began to fade. Few could have imagined exactly how the story would end, but many understood that a decisive moment was approaching. Soon, Montségur would face its greatest test. The sanctuary on the mountain will become the center of a siege that would capture the attention of an entire region. The people who had climbed the mountain seeking safety would find themselves trapped within its walls. And somewhere in the future, hidden within the final days of that siege, lay the mystery that would survive for centuries, the mystery of the treasure that vanished before dawn. Life inside a fortress awaiting its fate. When people think about medieval sieges, they often imagine battles, armies, and military strategy. Yet the true story of Montségur is not found solely in the movements of soldiers. It is found in the lives of the men, women, and children who lived behind the fortress walls as the future grew increasingly uncertain. By the spring of 1243, enemy forces had arrived at the mountain. What began as concern slowly transformed into reality. The fortress was surrounded. The people inside could see campfires glowing below at night. They could watch movement in the valleys. They understood that the mountain which had protected them for years was now isolating them from the outside world. Life inside Montségur changed immediately. Ordinary routines became difficult. Every decision mattered. Supplies had to be carefully managed. Food could not be wasted. Water became precious. Families who once focused on daily life now measured time differently. Each sunrise brought another day of survival. Each sunset brought another night wondering what might happen next. Unlike sudden battles that unfold within hours, sieges create a different kind of pressure. Days become weeks. Weeks become months. Fear settles into daily life. People continue their routines because they must, but uncertainty follows them everywhere. Imagine standing atop the mountain and looking down at the enemy encampments below. Every morning, the sight would serve as a reminder that the fortress was trapped. There was no easy escape. The defenders could not simply walk away. The steep mountain paths that once connected Montségur to surrounding communities were now dangerous. Every route was watched. Every descent carried enormous risk. Yet life continued within the walls. Children still needed care. Meals still needed preparation. Religious services still took place. Conversations continued around fires during cold evenings. The human spirit has always possessed a remarkable ability to adapt, even under extraordinary circumstances. For the Cathars living within Montségur, the siege carried significance beyond physical survival. Many believed they were defending more than a fortress. They were protecting a way of life, a community, and beliefs they considered deeply important. Historical accounts suggest that religious ceremonies continued throughout the siege. Leaders offered guidance. Families found comfort in shared traditions. These moments became especially meaningful as the months passed. The fortress was no longer simply a refuge. It had become the final gathering place for people who knew their future was uncertain. Meanwhile, the attackers faced challenges of their own. The mountain was not easy to conquer. Its steep slopes favored the defenders. Reaching the fortress required determination and patience. As a result, the siege stretched on month after month. Neither side could achieve a quick victory. For those inside Montségur, however, time was not necessarily an ally. Supplies diminished gradually. Every passing week increased the pressure. The defenders understood a difficult truth. Even the strongest fortress cannot survive forever if cut off from the outside world. One of the most fascinating aspects of the siege is how much courage ordinary people displayed during extraordinary circumstances. Historical narratives often focus on famous leaders and major events, but countless unnamed individuals experienced the siege firsthand. Parents comforted frightened children. Friends supported one another through uncertainty. Elders shared stories and memories. Young people who had grown up within the safety of the fortress suddenly found themselves confronting realities they could never have imagined. These human experiences rarely appear in official records, yet they formed the emotional heart of life inside Montségur. As winter turned towards spring, the situation grew increasingly difficult. Reports from the period suggest that enemy forces were making progress. Strategic positions around a mountain had been secured. The defenders remained resilient, but the possibility of holding out indefinitely was fading. Conversations inside the fortress began to change. People no longer discussed whether the siege would end. Instead, they wondered how it would end. Would reinforcement arrive? Could negotiations succeed? Was there any realistic path to survival? These questions lingered in every corner of the fortress. The most haunting aspect of the story may be the knowledge that many people inside Montségur likely sensed what was coming. They could see the evidence with their own eyes. The mountain was still beautiful. The valleys below still stretched toward the horizon. Yet the future seemed to narrow with each passing day. Every sunrise carried uncertainty. Every night brought reflection. The defenders continued their routines because there was little else they could do. They lived one day at a time while history quietly moved toward its conclusion. Then, after months of endurance, a realization began to spread throughout the fortress. The siege could not continue forever. Decisions would soon have to be made. Some involved survival. Others involved sacrifice. And hidden among those decisions was a secret that would outlive everyone involved. Somewhere within the final days of Montségur, plans were already taking shape. Plans that would lead a small group of people down the mountain under cover of darkness, carrying something so important that generations would spend centuries trying to discover what it was. The fortress had not yet fallen, but the mystery had already begun. The treasure that vanished before dawn. As the siege entered its final chapter, the people inside Montségur faced a reality that could no longer be ignored. Negotiations had begun. The fortress would not hold forever. The defenders understood that surrender was approaching, and with it would come consequences that would alter countless lives. Yet amid these final days, an event occurred that would transform Montségur from an important historical site into one of Europe's greatest unsolved mysteries. Historical accounts describe something extraordinary. Shortly before the fortress surrendered in March of 1244, a small group of individuals reportedly escaped from the mountain under cover of darkness. The details remain frustratingly limited. No complete record tells us exactly who they were. No surviving document provides a complete inventory of what they carried. Yet the story has endured because even contemporary sources suggested that something of great importance left the fortress before its fall. To appreciate the significance of this event, it helps to understand the circumstances. Montségur was not an ordinary hilltop village where someone could quietly walk away unnoticed. The fortress sat atop a steep mountain surrounded by hostile forces. Every path was dangerous. Every descent involved risk. Darkness may have concealed movement, but also increased the danger of navigating rocky cliffs and narrow trails. Anyone attempting to leave the fortress faced the possibility of discovery, capture, injury, or death. This was not a casual journey. It was a desperate mission carried out when failure could have been fatal. That reality raises a question that continues to fascinate historians. What could have been so valuable that people were willing to risk everything to protect it? Some theories suggest the escapees carried gold or silver. At first glance, that seems reasonable. Wealth has motivated countless acts throughout history. Yet many researchers remain skeptical. Transporting large quantities of treasure down a mountain under enemy observation would have been extraordinarily difficult. Gold is heavy. Precious metals are cumbersome. If survival was the goal, burdening oneself with excessive weight would have made escape even more dangerous. As a result, some historians believe the treasure may have been something entirely different. Others propose that sacred texts left the fortress that night. The Cathars possessed religious teachings and traditions that distinguished them from the wider society around them. Written documents may have been viewed as priceless. Unlike gold, manuscripts could preserve ideas, beliefs, and knowledge for future generations. If leaders feared that important writings would be destroyed after the surrender, protecting them might have become a priority. Yet despite centuries of searching, no collection of Cathar documents has ever emerged that conclusively solves the mystery. Then there are the theories that capture the imagination of the public. Some treasure hunters believe the escapees carried a powerful relic. Over time, speculation expanded into stories involving legendary objects, hidden artifacts, and sacred treasures. Among the most famous is the claim that the Holy Grail somehow became connected to Montségur. Historians caution that evidence supporting such ideas is limited, yet the theory refuses to disappear. The combination of a secret escape, a doomed fortress, and a missing treasure creates fertile ground for speculation. Once people begin imagining possibilities, the mystery takes on a life of its own. What makes the story remarkable is not merely the escape itself. It is what happened afterward. The trail vanishes. The fortress surrendered on March 16, 1244. Historical records continue describing events that followed. Yet the individuals who reportedly carry the treasure disappear into uncertainty. No confirmed account explains where they went. No verified discovery reveals what they protected. The treasure simply slips beyond the reach of history. Imagine standing atop Montségur on that final night. The mountain is silent except for the wind. Enemy campfires flicker in the valleys below. Somewhere within the fortress, a small group prepares to leave. Perhaps they understand the significance of their mission. Perhaps they know that future generations will wonder about their actions. Or perhaps they are simply focused on survival, one careful step at a time. They begin descending the mountain. Darkness conceals them. The cliffs offer danger at every turn. Below lies uncertainty. Behind them stands a fortress approaching its final hours. Then they are gone. The next morning arrives. The fortress remains. The defenders face their fate. History records the surrender. Yet the treasure does not return. Whatever left the mountain remains absent from the historical record. Centuries pass. Kingdoms rise and fall. Wars reshape Europe. Generations come and go. Still the same question survives. What disappeared from Montségur before dawn? That question has become more valuable than any treasure itself. Because while gold can be counted and relics can be displayed, a mystery can endure forever. And for nearly 8 centuries, the mystery of Montségur has refused to fade. It waits within the silence of the mountain, challenging every visitor to imagine what may have vanished into the darkness on that unforgettable night. 8 centuries of searching. The mystery should have ended with the fall of Montségur. History is filled with lost objects, forgotten journeys, and unanswered questions that gradually disappear from public memory. Yet Montségur followed a different path. Instead of fading into obscurity, the story of the missing treasure grew stronger with each passing century. Long after the people involved were gone, the mountain continued attracting those who believed the answer might still be waiting somewhere among the forests, valleys, caves, and remote landscapes of southern France. What makes Montségur unique is that the mystery remains grounded in a real historical event. There truly was a siege. The fortress truly surrendered. Historical sources genuinely describe an escape shortly before the end. Those facts provide enough certainty to keep curiosity alive while leaving enough uncertainty for endless debate. Unlike legends that emerge centuries after the fact, the mystery of Montségur begins with an actual moment in history. The problem is that the most important piece of information, the identity of the treasure, never appears. As a result, generations have attempted to fill the silence. Some researchers believe the treasure never traveled very far. According to one theory, the escapees may have hidden it somewhere within the rugged mountains surrounding Montségur. The region contains forests, caves, narrow ravines, and isolated terrain where objects could remain concealed for generations. Treasure hunters have spent decades exploring the landscape, hoping to discover evidence overlooked by previous searches. Every unusual rock formation, hidden passage, and forgotten trail has inspired speculation. Yet despite countless investigations, no discovery has definitively solved the mystery. Others believe the escapees successfully reached allies beyond the mountains. In this version of events, the treasure was not hidden, but transferred. It may have been carried from one safe location to another until it disappeared into the broader currents of European history. If this theory is correct, the treasure could have traveled hundreds of miles from Montségur, leaving no obvious connection to the fortress that inspired the search. The challenge, of course, is proving it. Without definitive records, every possibility remains open. The most fascinating theories involve not wealth but knowledge. Many historians point out that ideas can be more valuable than gold. A chest filled with coins can enrich a single generation. A collection of writings can influence centuries. This perspective has led some researchers to suggest that the escapees were protecting documents, teachings, or records considered essential to preserving their beliefs. If true, the treasure may have been priceless not because of its material value, but because of what it represented. Such a possibility transforms the mystery from a hunt for riches into a search for lost knowledge. Then there are the legends that have captured the public imagination. Over time, stories linking Montségur to sacred relics began appearing in books, documentaries, and popular culture. The most famous involves the Holy Grail. According to these theories, the treasure carried from the fortress may have been connected to one of history's most legendary objects. Serious historians remain cautious about such claims, noting that direct evidence is scarce. Yet the persistence of the theory reveals something important. People are drawn to mysteries that connect history with possibility. The idea that an object of immense significance could have vanished from a mountaintop fortress is difficult to resist. Visitors arriving at Montségur today often discover that the mountain itself becomes part of the experience. The climb to the summit remains challenging. As the trail rises higher, the modern world seems to drift away. The wind moves across the slopes. The valleys stretch toward the horizon. Eventually, the ruins appear, standing where they have stood for centuries. Although much of the original fortress is gone, the atmosphere remains powerful. Travelers frequently describe a feeling of standing inside history. They look across the same landscape seen by the defenders, the attackers, and perhaps even the mysterious escapees who disappeared into the darkness nearly 800 years ago. What is remarkable is how often the mystery changes people who encounter it. Some arrive expecting a simple historical site and leave fascinated by the unanswered questions. Others become intrigued by the human stories behind the fortress. Many discover that the treasure itself gradually becomes less important than the search. The mystery encourages curiosity. It invites investigation. It transforms visitors into explorers. Every person who climbs the mountain participates in a story that remains unfinished. Perhaps that is why Montségur continues to endure. The fortress offers no final answer. It refuses to provide certainty. Instead, it leaves room for imagination while remaining firmly rooted in real history. Somewhere between documented events and unanswered questions lies the reason the mystery survives. The mountain keeps its secrets. The treasure remains unidentified. The escape remains unresolved. Yet generation after generation continues searching. And that may be the greatest victory of all. Nearly 8 centuries after the fortress fell, the mystery still lives. Today, Montségur Castle stands as one of France's most remarkable historical landmarks. Visitors climb the mountain to admire the scenery, explore the ruins, and connect with a story that has survived for nearly 800 years. Yet for many, the true attraction is not the fortress itself. It is the question that remains unanswered. What was carried out of Montségur before dawn? Was it wealth, knowledge, a sacred relic, or something else entirely? No discovery has settled the debate. No document has revealed the truth. The mystery endures, waiting for each new generation to consider the possibilities. Perhaps the treasure vanished forever. Or perhaps the real treasure was never the object itself, but the story it left behind, a story powerful enough to outlive kingdoms, wars, and centuries of change. If you enjoyed this journey into one of Europe's greatest unsolved historical mysteries, be sure to subscribe to Tilt and Chill. Join us as we continue exploring remarkable places where history, travel, legends, and unanswered questions come together to create stories that refuse to be forgotten. Until our next adventure, keep exploring, keep wondering, and keep chasing the mysteries hidden across our world.